You've got to understand that historians hate Ronald Reagan. I tell people, I say, how can I tell if a textbook's biased? I say, well, my pregnancy test for a biased textbook is turn in the index to Reagan and see what they say about Reagan. Historians have portrayed Reagan as lazy. One said of Ronald Reagan, quote, he rose at the crack of noon, sort of like my college-age son, who never gets a class before 3 o'clock, it seems. Yet, in fact, in his recently released diaries, you see that Reagan was in meetings from 8 to 5 every day, and then he went out on the Washington social and entertainment circuit, because that's what you have to do when you're president. He would entertain people till 11 or 12 at night. Not bad for a 70-year-old man. I'm only 56 and I need my nap every day. They portrayed Reagan as lucky. They said it wasn't his conservatism that won, but other factors in 1980. People just didn't like Carter. One textbook said only 11% of Reagan supporters voted for him because of his conservative platform. Another said fully 38% of the people pulled the Reagan lever simply because he wasn't Jimmy Carter. A book called The United States by Jordan Litwack sarcastically wrote that, quote, the new president entered the White House having received a landslide of only 26% of the electorate. They don't bother to mention that that 26% of the electorate was a larger landslide than Clinton got in 1992. Reagan received a higher percentage, adjusting for the number of non-voters, than Clinton did, but this was a common thread throughout the text. Another said the biggest story of the election was the number of people who did not vote. These are all quotations from U.S. history textbooks. They portrayed Reagan as stupid. A photo caption with Goldfield's American Journey, very popular college textbook, after acknowledging Reagan's great communication skills, dutifully noted, quote, critics question his grasp of complex issues. In other words, he could con people, but he couldn't really think. Reagan, says another textbook, quote, was no intellectual. In recent years, we've had the publication of Reagan's radio speeches from the 1970s, speeches that he hand wrote on a variety of topics, and you find a very creative, insightful, and deep-thinking mind. He was a leader who was always setting the agenda and was not manipulated by advisors, as he's portrayed in the textbooks. They portrayed him as the candidate of the rich. One text complained, quote, the new administration made the conspicuous display of wealth once again a sign of success and power. And another reported, quote, a group of wealthy, conservative Southern Californians encouraged Reagan to run for governor. They noted these backers made their fortunes in California real estate and oil. The oil business. Davidson's Nation of Nations, Farragher's Out of Many One, Bailey and Kennedy, to name a few, make sure that students know that Reagan, quote, only stood for the rich. Some of the most egregious errors involving the Reagan era, though, and what caused me to start writing A Patriot's History of the United States, was literally this chart. In the 1980s, the Reagan tax cuts resulted in a phenomenal economic boom. Unemployment plummeted. Inflation was cut down to 0 in 1 quarter, always around or under 2. The economy just absolutely boomed. In many ways, we are still, to some degree, living off the Reagan economic boom. Unable to challenge that, the historians began to focus solely on the deficits in the Reagan years. This is a chart from a book called The American Pageant. At one time, it was the best-selling U.S. history textbook out there. And this is the deficits chart for the Reagan years. And the objective of this chart is to make the student think, you know, look at the 1980s, that crazy doddering old Reagan. What was wrong with him? Look at those deficits. Gee, didn't he know what was going on? Now, you business and econ students will note that the devil is in the details. In this case, the heading, billions of dollars. There is a word missing. Billions of real dollars. the historians did not adjust for inflation. And of course, as you know, over the years, inflation's gotten worse and worse. We just saw the Pony Express guys were making $25 a week. There's an American around today who worked for $25 a week, right? So I got their data, and I redid their data in real dollars. But then I thought, you know, if we're talking about debt, deficits, which is how much the U.S. owes on a yearly basis, we need to know how much the U.S. makes on a yearly basis, right? If I tell you that I had my Visa bill come in this week and my Visa bill was $1,000, is that a lot of money or not? Well, to some students it might be a killer. I mean, you might be looking for a tall building to jump out of. For Bill Gates, if he gets a Visa bill of $1,000, he's going to throw it in a desk drawer until it mounts up to maybe $2 or $3 million. Then he might bother to pay it. It's not worth writing a check for Bill Gates. So I took these numbers, adjusted them for inflation as a share of GNP. And you'll see that the chart isn't even the same. It is absolutely stunning, the visual difference. If you just kind of move that over there, you can get an idea of how bad a visual image was portrayed by this set of charts. But these guys are historians. They're not economists. They probably just screwed up, right? It was just a mistake. Just made you know, just kind of an error that they didn't know about. No. Here's the chart on the national debt. Same textbook, same subject, Reagan. And once again, you see that in the Reagan years, it appears that the national debt just goes off the charts. It's just crazy. What was wrong with that doddering old man? Right? In fact, in this chart, the authors went one step further to make sure you young skulls full of mush got the point. What they did was they put in bars to make sure that you saw where Reagan fit into all of this. Now, most of you in here are too old to remember Sesame Street, and you're too young to have kids, so you have to watch Sesame Street. But I remember sitting with my son watching Sesame Street, and they used to have this thing called, 3 of these things are kind of the same thing, 1 of these things is not quite the same. And you'd have a parakeet, a parakeet, a parakeet, and a crocodile. And say, now Susie, what's different? Oh, the crocodile different. You know, very good, Susie. All right. So let's play the Sesame Street game here with our bar graphs, shall we? Depression, event. World War II breaks out. That's an event. Japan surrenders, event. Korean War breaks out, event. Vietnam War, event. Reagan! Person.